with a 64 present. A Playguide and video review. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hey there, welcome to another Lemon C64 play guide and review. In this episode we'll be taking a look at Tales of the Cat. Tales of the Cat was developed and released in 1986 and marketed by Rhino Marketing. So let's press fire and let's check this game out. In Tales of the Cat we play as a cat, and to begin with everything seems very easy. All we have to do is to collect one item per screen, and then we should touch the very left hand part of that pavement or the walkway there, and then we'll be transported onto the next room. All the items are usually lying there in the centre of the road, so all we have to do is to pull back, and sometimes if the cat stands still the pullback will reverse our position, so you have to watch there for the cat sitting down and getting bored. But usually if we pull back we can pull into that item, collect that, and then move directly up there onto that sidewalk and off that screen. On this screen though we have to do it by climbing those steps, and the exit there is marked. So you can see this game is pretty cutesy. It should appeal to not only the 8-year-old or maybe the 12-year-old. I was playing this at the time, but it's pretty straightforward and it's not too hard to begin with. The levels are big and chunky, and you can see those cars there are very reminiscent once again of Percy the Potty Pigeon, and as far as I know this game was nothing to do with Percy Pigeon, but those graphics are pretty similar, and this time we have to avoid things rather than shoot things, but that's not too hard as long as we avoid that traffic. You can see some signs there at the bottom, and you can see also extra traps falling on our heads, plant pots there, reminding me of The Last Ninja 2. And you can see a few in-jokes, the sore head pub there, and Mark joins the squad was probably a joke at someone's expense. But to begin with, this game is certainly aimed at the lower age group, judging by the puzzles that we have to solve in these levels, and most of those depend on avoiding the walkway altogether and just staying in the centre of that road. So it's almost like we're playing Test Drive 2 there, sticking in the centre of that road and avoiding the traffic. But on this screen the bird will head towards that seed, and yet again that reminds me of Potty Pigeon, but this time it isn't necessarily obvious what we must do, and we actually should walk through that doorway, but the game isn't very amenable to that option, and so the player might be forgiven for thinking that the road there is actually the way to go, but unfortunately not. You have to walk through that walkway, and if you don't before the bird gets back, then that's your chances over. Yes, the level won't reset, and you cannot exit that level, and you are stuck. Even when you die there, it doesn't reset. So you can see the jumping mechanism is very smooth and well done, and the music is kind of okay. It's kind of a good rendition, but kind of not at the same time, of the unforgettable classic track Sir Duke by Stevie Wonder. But you can see this screen has reset, so let's go for that seed again, and let's try to get that bird out there, and hopefully we can make a dash for that and get in that space. Again, the game at this stage is very, very nice and easy, and all the player has to do is to move from one screen to the next. Unfortunately, this screen heralds the second half of the game, and in the second half of the game this is certainly not designed for 8-year-olds. This game is designed for people with an amazing attention span and amazing detail for pixel perfect jumps. If you can, well, you can get far in this game, and if you can't, you'll find yourself infuriated. So here's me wasting my last few lives here trying to jump over what looks like an impossible gap, and you can see, well, some pixels removed there on the floor, which indicates we must jump over those, but unfortunately we cannot leap over that gap, and no amount of trying will get us there, so that's my game over. So this game really comes in two halves. The first half can be attempted by the novice, and it doesn't take too much to work that out. In fact, that can be fun. But the second half has been fiendishly designed to test even the most sensible and even the most accurate player on those controls, and that borders on insanity. In this section we can actually move in 3D, and we can actually rise above that target gap there in the floor, and that's how you get over it. But there's a third gap there, and we have to time those maneuvers, and this is only the start, the very first screen of the hardship that we will face on this game. And yes, you have to time that to perfection. But the programmers of this game certainly haven't taken it easy on the player, because the player will be feeling quite cocky by this stage, having breezed through this game, and it only takes 15 minutes to complete this game end to end if you know what you are doing. But the Potty Pigeon similarities continue throughout this game, and instead of us firing a hail of bombs down on the player, unfortunately it's the player that gets the hail of shit in this game. And this game is rapidly turning into that, and I'm basically up to my ankles in it right now. So let's persuade ourselves to continue onto another level, and again we have learnt that the level is 3D and we should rise above that gap in the floor. But that's easier said than done because of this storm raining down on our heads, and if we don't touch that gap absolutely perfectly, yes, if we touch the gap we will die, and if we touch that water we'll die. That's because the very edge of that cliff is a trigger point for our death, and after all that, even if we avoid all these dropping obstacles and everything else which lies in our way, and even if we get started on the screen to begin with, then, well, we still have to get the raft and jump over and make that perfect first time. So you can see there, I'm actually playing this game with the infinite lives, and our lives are rolling around there faster than a petroleum garage, but we are still continuing and persevering, and it doesn't really encourage the player with this kind of hassle on the level, and that makes the whole thing impossible. So as you watch me trying to master this infinitely irritating level, I'll just tell you a little more about this game. It was coded by John Megan, who you may remember from our Robocop review, and he went on to code similarly hard games, and his back catalogue includes Navy Seals, Ark Pandora, Rastan, Slap Fight, and even Short Circuit, which only had 2 levels, but the second level was very reminiscent to this one, i.e. it's involved rafts and jumping and that kind of thing. So John Megan, with a history of hard games on the Commodore 64. The second producer and designer of this game was John Stevenson, and he also worked with John Megan on Ark Pandora, and he went on to Pub Games in 1986, the same year as this, and also Mrs. Mop appeared in 1987. Rhino were a very cut-price, low-budget distributor of games, and you may remember them with Bombo in 1986, again, probably their biggest release, and surprisingly Zed in 1985 was a very Parallax-type game, and that probably inspired Parallax by Ocean in 1986, and so if you like overhead flight shooters there with very large maps you can scroll around, definitely check out Zed by Rhino Marketing. But returning to this 1986 game, we find ourselves just about mastering this level, having taken probably infinite lives to get there, and the annoyances of this game really do build up, and you can imagine with normal lives at this point I would probably have thrown the controller through the wall and through the window and out beyond the yard. But I don't know quite how John Megan and John Stevenson managed to change and turn and transform an ordinary Tales of the Cat, fluffy pigtail adventure into something which requires pixel perfect jumps and something which infuriates the player at every opportunity. Finally, after much trial and error, we managed to get through this one screen, and this isn't the end of the game. No, there are still maybe 5 screens after this. So, well, I'm surprised the bird didn't hit us there, but we got through and on to the next section. And, well, off to the next section there as we die instantly. So I don't know quite, again, what was running through those guys' minds as they programmed this. Maybe they thought that this was the ultimate training apparatus for would-be gamers out there. Maybe they thought this was the combat school for cat lovers everywhere. But no matter what they're thinking, unfortunately it doesn't work. It is far too easy to get far into this game, only to be defeated time and time and time again because of the game's logic. So let's persevere. It must be possible, and it absolutely has to be possible, but you can see the lives there are just ticking down. I guess that's why the magazine reviewers weren't too helpful on the reviews of this game, and basically Commodore User gave this 40%, and that just sums up the quality of this effort. Yes, you could probably buy this for $1.99, maybe even 99p at one of those budget bargain basement bins, but that's probably all this game is worth. And the music, although it starts off well, is actually pretty annoying after a while, and that actually grates on the nerves. But it certainly doesn't grate on the nerves as much as these screens, and 5 million can't be wrong. It's a message to you guys that say playability rules the world, but if 5 million people agree that this level and this screen in particular is very easy, then they are wrong. And unfortunately my skills and my efforts to get anywhere near further in this game, even with infinite lives there, look at that, very close indeed. Well, unfortunately, they come to nothing. So, that isn't the end of the game, unbelievably. Yes, there are more screens than this, and the programmer has actually created something which is not only a nightmare to complete, but if we take a look at the long play, it's actually insane. So thank you for viewing Tales of the Cat there, and this is a game that I wouldn't normally review, but it reminded me so much of Potty Pigeon. They virtually stole those ideas, and it's another one of those cutesy platformers, but unfortunately I had to review this given the impossible nature of this game, which could have been great, and that even at the very end the ego of the programmers make the code there, Tales of the Cat, and then finally you will be given some bonuses depending on your lives remaining. So thank you once again for joining me on this unbelievable stinker, which could have been so much more, and I hope you will join me on hopefully a better game next time on another Playguide and review.